Hello and welcome back to another day in the arena. It's me, it's CGB, and today in the arena we are going to go over some of the commons and uncommons, the easy crafts from the new set, because for the first time in a long time that I can remember, so many of them are really good. They're actually going to define and enable all kinds of archetypes across a number of different strategies, and usually I skip through the commons and uncommons and figure if one is good it will find me, and in this case I feel a need to tell you guys about them and talk about them because there are some really interesting cards out there and some very cool commons and uncommons that are worth the discussion, and that you can get some of them out of those packs, but you can also run out there and craft on day one, and it will carry your decks for the next 2 years. So we're going to talk about them. Also, we've got some housekeeping to do. Apparently my not complete set review wasn't complete. There were some missing cards. They told me, I thought I was looking at a full set list, but there were at least 3 rares missing from that we're going to have to go over as well. Before we dive all the way in and completely let the nonsense begin, today's video goes out to Scotty86, who signed up at the shout out tier on Patreon. Check the link in the description if you would like the support and a shout out. So Scotty86, you are very cool. Also, today's video is sponsored, #sponsored, by NordVPN. Please check out the link in the description. These sponsored videos really do help out the channel, and you guys engaging with it and possibly clicking on the link, seeing if this looks like something you should try, and then trying it out really supports me in the long run. Even if you don't keep it forever, at least give it a try. Give them a chance to earn your business, as it were. NordVPN has hooked me up with a trial service, and I've been liking it a lot. It's helped me out in a few little road trips I've had to take recently. So that's just my quick little plug. Now we're gonna run the highly produced, amazingly edited, brilliant CGB level versus Gixx ads that you've come to know and expect and love on the channel. Without further ado, take it away, NordVPN.
Time for a little stream sniping.
I keep a step ahead of Gixx with NordVPN. NordVPN can connect with one click. It's fast, it's easy to use, and it works on up to 6 devices.
Not NordVPN!
NordVPN's new threat protection feature has advanced anti-malware capabilities, so Gixx has no chance.
You CGB!
The ability to block trackers helps the user avoid online spies and stalkers.
What, are you afraid of a little stream sniping?
Don't let the Phyrexians find you. Get the exclusive NordVPN deal here. NordVPN.com/covertgoblue. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee.
30-day money-back guarantee!
That's NordVPN.com/covertgoblue.
We'll meet again, CGB.
And we are back to start talking about the cards. One more little plug before we do. Last I checked this morning, there were still a few official Covert Go Blue playmats available at lanterngames.com, so you can check out the link to that or search for official Covert Go Blue playmats, Lantern Games, and you should find it pretty quickly. We only make 100 of these at a time. They're only available for limited amounts of time. Last time they sold out really fast. So if you're looking to get a playmat, get a little plus luck on your arena shuffler, then please check out this one. They're cool. Feels really weird shilling my own logo. I really appreciate everybody who buys them. Like, it blows my mind that people would buy a product with my logo on it, but I know you guys really like them, so we'll continue trying to come up with cool stuff for you. All right, ads. Oh my God, if it's your first time watching my video, do I usually add this much? Depends what you mean. Some would say the YouTube ads are a lot. At least the less of those, I don't know. Anyway, let's get into it. The commons and uncommons from the new set. But wait, there was one more thing I have to do. That's right. We have to go over the rares that were not on the Scryfall search that I did yesterday, that kind of snuck past me, that I haven't covered yet. So we'll start there. Urza Assembles the Titans. 3 white enchantment saga with read ahead. Chapter 1, Scry 4, you may reveal the top card of your library. If a planeswalker card is revealed this way, put it into your hand. Okay. Chapter 2, you may put a planeswalker card with mana value 6 or less from your hand onto the battlefield. Whoosha! Here's my planeswalker. Chapter 3, you may activate the loyalty abilities of planeswalkers you control twice this turn rather than only once. Oh, this turn. That's too bad. So you get a one-shot double walking. I don't know, man. You get to draw a card off this if you have a planeswalker in your top 4. That means a lot of planeswalkers. You get a mana boost off this if you have a 6 mana planeswalker in your hand. That's an expensive planeswalker to have in your deck. So you can see how it all plays together. You can see how it could all come together. You could also say, obviously, planeswalker-centric deck, and I'm not even sure if you run a ton of them in that deck. I'm sure we'll try a Super Friends deck that spams Urza Assembles the Titans, but my recommendation is not to craft it, as it doesn't seem like it fits in a variety of decks, and I'm not even sure it's good, like actively good most of the time in this deck. Maybe you'd just be better off drawing, say, the planeswalker itself than drawing Urza Assembles the Titans. The next one is another saga with read ahead. It's Cruelty of Gixx. This is 3 black, 5 total mana. Chapter 1 is target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a creature or planeswalker from it. That player discards that card. Ha! It's the perfect foil to the other one, Urza Assembles the Titans. Chapter 2, search your library for a card. Put that card into your hand, then shuffle. You lose 3 life, so a Grim Tutor. And then Chapter 3 is to put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So that gives me a little bit of the Eldest Reborn vibes. I think this card is much better than Urza Assembles the Titans. Is it playable? If you are in a standard where it's a very mid-rangey slugfest where each player is like drawing cards and setting up for things, playing the Cruelty of Gixx can be a big deal. You take, to say, their Titan of Industry or other mega creature out of their hand. On your turn, you search your library for the perfect card, and then on the last chapter, you get that Titan of Industry back from the opponent. I can see metas where this card is very good. It definitely seems closer to a best of 3 card because post-board games, things tend to slow down, and this card looks actively bad, and I mean pretty bad, against an aggro deck that is just beating you to death. So this card gets, for best of 1, for Mythic Ladder Gaming, should you craft this? I would craft, like, if you craft 1, I don't think it can be too bad. You would draw it in, you know, certain matchups. As long as you have big creatures to reanimate, or you plan to kill their creatures and reanimate them, I can see 1 being a good number of craft for this card. So I'm going to recommend 1. Next up, Ortie Resurrected. 2 and Dimir for a 3/2 Phyrexian human legendary wizard. Flash. When it enters the battlefield, choose up to 1 counter target spell, activate ability, or triggered ability. That's good. Its controller draws a card. Ugh. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Its controller draws a card. This is one of the more versatile answers in history, with that tremendous downside that your opponent gets to draw cards off of it. But that level of flexibility and the fact that you get a body that can attack, block, be reanimated, be blinked, be returned to hand, all of those things, it's one of the best ETBs ever, except for that little draw a card line. Like, if they made this without the draw a card line, it would be absolutely busted. But I still think this card is playable. I think that sometimes when you get that level of power and flexibility all in one thing, that giving your opponents a card isn't the end of the world. We've seen Fateful Absence doing that type of thing. If you're flashing in an Ortie Resurrected in combat, blowing up their larger creature, blocking their other creature, taking 2 creatures off the board with 1 card, giving them a backup card, and staying alive is not the worst thing. Should you craft it? This is a tough recommendation. This is, of the cards we've talked about, this is a card I really want to play and see exactly where it fits in these tempo type decks. Where do you get to where you can take over a game so that that card disadvantage that they pick up from this doesn't matter. This could be a really good card and it could be a bust. I'm gonna go with don't craft for now, and as it's my first time reading it, maybe I need to absorb a little more of the play pattern, because this adds a very interesting pattern. But part of it is the level of replaceability. If you didn't have Ortie in your hand, what if you had a good counter spell and just countered the spell that you saw? What if you had a good removal spell and just killed the creature that you wanted to remove? What if you just had the right basic card instead of this fancy card? Would you be wrecked? Probably not, which means this card isn't probably a must-craft staple, which means I'm going to tell you to back off it for now and leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Let the brewers figure it out before your wild cards get lit on fire. All right. Now we've done that, and I feel like we've completed the last video a little bit better. And now we're going to talk about some commons and uncommons. It should go without saying on all of these, just craft them, unless you're tied up on uncommon wild cards, as some budget gamers can be. For the most part, just crafting these cards and playing with them is a safe bet. They seem to be above the average power level for that type, and they might end up really making some specific decks. So I'm not going to give crafting recommendations on these. We're just going to talk about them and why they're probably good. Runic Shot is 1 white for a sorcery with kicker blue. Destroy target tapped creature. If this spell was kicked, scry 2. 1 white mana, sorcery speed, destroy target tapped creature. They have continued to try to make spells that are like destroy target attacking creature, destroy target tapped creature. And those cards, for as excited as you get about them as they keep getting cheaper and doing more stuff, think of like Banishing Stroke from Kamigawa, as long as they're like sorcery speed or can only be played during combat, they just don't seem to get a ton of play. Runic Shot is the most aggressive yet. At just 1 white mana, destroy target tapped creature. Wow. Also, if it was kicked, if you just throw in 1 more blue, you get scry 2 selection on it, which is very good. So I think that this card will make the cut somewhere and see some play. It's too cheap not to. Like, you can take a hit once, you know, from a creature from your opponent's 2-drop and then take it out for 1 mana, possibly 2 if you want that scry. That's so good. So for me, Runic Shot is going to make the cut. I have a feeling that this one will see serious play. Combat Research. An uncommon blue enchantment aura. An enchanted creature has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. As long as enchanted creature is legendary, it gets +1/+1 and has ward. What is this class warfare? Are legendary types just they just learn more from research? It makes them more buff, it makes them more smart, whereas common plebs can't learn from books? What is this nonsense? It is anyway. They brought back Curiosity, a card that, and along with like similar cards like Curious Obsession, have made the mono blue tempo deck a real pain in the butt. And when I think about a card like this ending up on one of those Illuminator Virtuosos or cards like it, the Storm Chaser Drake, whatever it is, the 2/1 that draws a card when you enchant it, I get a little disgusted. And that's not even fully using the card. When we start to examine the legendary creatures we could enchant, where it would get a bonus and a little bit of disruption with Ward 1, it becomes really scary. Combat Research is going to be a strong enabler for the tempo archetype once again, and it's going to be a card that you're going to have to watch out for. I'm kind of scared. It seems really good for this format. Next up is Essence Scatter. It's a reprint. We will cover some reprints here. It's reprinted at common for 1 in blue counter target creature spell. You probably already have some of these, so make sure you check your collection before crafting. That goes for anything I say is a reprint. But just boom, counter target thingy. Essence Scatter serves an important role in all kinds of formats. When the creatures have ETBs that are too good, when every creature you play enters the battlefield and draws like a card, or enters the battlefield and destroys a card, Essence Scatter is a way to break the parity of getting value out of every single spell and creating a 1-for-1 trade again. So it's always nice to see it in formats. And I know I was getting very disappointed with my counterspell selection when I was building my rotation proof decks. So Essence Scatter, you're a good one. Founding the Third Path. This is a Saga with read ahead. It is 1 in a blue. For chapter 1, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 1 or 2 from your hand without paying its mana cost. Chapter 2 is target player mills 4 cards. Chapter 3 is exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, copy it. You may cast the copy. If you're reading ahead on this card, I don't know if it's particularly good or useful. However, if you're getting every single chapter and getting something from it, that's really good. So be on the lookout for blue and other cheap instants or sorceries that you want to cast the first time you played the Founding of the Third Path, so that you get that free mana boost. Then in chapter 2, that mill sets you up to cast another instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. Something that is easy to miss with this card: the first chapter is mana gated. It has to be mana value 1 or 2. The last chapter is not. It can be a Magma Opus, although that's rotating out of standard. If it were still here, we could choose Magma Opus. So if there are huge, powerful instants and sorceries that you would like to cast with Founding the Third Path, well, for one thing, if they have cycling, you can send them straight to the graveyard. For another thing, if it's chapter 2, you might happen to mill them. So keep an eye out for these kind of cards. Channel is another ability, although I think that's mostly on permanence. But, you know, if you can get, like, sneak these into your graveyard and then cast giant spells from the graveyard that have a huge impact on the game, this is an extremely powerful card. Next is Joint Exploration. We're both going places together, guys. It's 1 in a blue for an instant, and it has kicker of green. And it says scry 2, then draw a card. That's fun. If this spell was kicked, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. That's really fun. That is probably as close as we're going to get to Growth Spiral again anytime soon. Growth Spiral was kind of busted the more that we played with it and the more things that we did with it, and I don't think they'll reprint that. But this is, for 2 mana, you can just dig for a card, and for 3 mana, you can ramp. And I think that's going to be very strong. I don't know if it's going to be 4-of staple, but I definitely think we'll try it as a 4-of staple, because if you get to ramp up to 5, it opens up a whole other world of things that you can do to opponents trying to curve out and smash you. So what exactly are we ramping into? I don't know. I don't have the perfect answer for what we're going to do on 5 that takes over the game. We had powerful cards like Nissa, who shakes the world, back when we had Growth Spiral. Also Wilderness Reclamation, Expansion Explosion. Like, there were so many just Hydroid Crisis. It was a good thing to have a lot of mana for. Emergent Ultimatum was something that you were using Growth Spiral to cast in the historic format. We don't have anything on that power level, but you just have to find that one thing that's better than what the opponent's deck can deal with. And then if you ramp into it, especially while drawing and getting selection along the way, it's really powerful. The next card is a reprint, but it's been a long time. It's Impulse. For 1 in a blue, this is an instant at common. Look at the top 4 cards of your library and put one of them in your hand and the rest on the bottom in any order. This is Impulse's first time on MTG Arena, so go forth and craft. Now that there's no expressive iteration in Standard, this seems like a really good selection spell for a variety of probably Izzet decks. The idea of going 4 deep to try to really hit your Fable of the Mirror Breaker on turn 3 sounds pretty good. It also plays well with the Founding of the Third Path, the Saga that we already covered, as a card that gets you really deep looking for exactly what you need. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Impulse making some plays. It's a very it's a deep digger. Like, it might also see play along the lines of, like, control decks. Just make sure you hit your Sweeper on time, make sure you hit your Wandering Emperor on time. We'll see. I would guess in those roles it's like a 2-of as opposed to a 4-of, but I bet that there's going to be some kind of a combo Spellslinger deck where you're going to want 4 Impulse. Negate's back again. Our counterspell suite was getting a little ugly, but now we have Essence Scatter, Negate, Make Disappear, Disdainful Stroke. Our 2-mana counterspells are looking strong if you're able to pick the right ones for the meta, and I'm not going to miss Test of Talents, that's for sure. So glad to have Negate back in the fold. Shore Up. This is a new one, but it feels like an old one. This is 1 blue. It is a common. It is an instant, and it says target creature you control gets +1/+1. and it gains hexproof until end of turn, and you untap it. I'm not trying to figure out whether or not this card is better than Slip Out the Back. Slip Out the Back has a different kind of thing going for it, where it saves your creature from board wipes like Meathook Massacre and Farewell, which is very important. Shore Up, though, protects it from spot removal spells, which are also going to be pretty common. And a really cool thing about Shore Up and Hexproof in general is that it gets that bonus and you hit your opponent that turn. I don't know how many times I was able to beat a deck that ran Illuminator Virtuoso Slip Up the Back type of shenanigans, because I knew that if they had Slip Out the Back, that they wouldn't hit me that turn. So they'd be attacking me for 10, and I would, you know, play my removal spell, and they would phase it out, but I wouldn't take the hit. Whereas a card like Shore Up would have just finished me. And they had UC a guard approach, but I mean, this one gives a bonus. It hits a bit harder. Also, untap it. Partly, like, you look at that and you're like, in limited, that's a combat trick. You untap your creature and block their thing, and that's a blowout. And that could happen in standard. I'm more looking at, are there going to be cards that tap and have a special ability when they tap or become tapped, right? And maybe untapping it lets you push that ability a little bit harder. So watch out for the untap part. It could be better than it looks. Our next card is Talarian Geyser, and this is 2 and a blue for a sorcery with a kicker of white that says return target creature to its owner's hand and draw a card. If the spell was kicked, you gain 3 life. These cards have never made it when they're sorcery. They just don't make it. Sorcery 3-man, return a thing to hand, draw a card, doesn't make it. But this one has a little life gain attached to it. It's like, it just throws in that little extra tempo that makes you wonder, okay, could this be the one? Like, where we're really happy to pay 4 mana to bounce a thing, draw a card, and gain 3 life? Like, that's a lot. It's that sorcery speed that really bothers me, and I don't know if this is going to make it. I think it stands out to people as this could be good. I think it might be a trap. There's also a kicker, 1 blue, return target creature or planeswalker you don't control to owner's hand, and then you add a kicker with a black and 2 others, and you can put it on the bottom of the library instead. And similar, I think that those are just a little bit too much. Like, I think it's just a little bit overpriced for those effects, but there's a lot of interesting kicker cards in the set. I kind of picked this to represent a number of them, spells that look like a good amount of value, especially when kicked, and I think they're all just a little bit overpriced, but they could still see play. Talarian Terror is 6 blue for a Serpent 5/5. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard, and it has Ward 2. So, that good old strategy of cast a whole bunch of spells, then play a really cheap threat and protect it with counter spells, this card could definitely take over the ground battlefields, as the opponents have to spend a lot of mana to try to deal with it, and if you have even cheap disruption like Make Disappear to mess that up, or give this thing hexproof with the Shore Up card that we just talked about, then their battlefield is like, their board is still dominated by this oversized creature on the ground. So will it see play? It depends. We do have some good cheap instants that kind of enable Consider, and Impulse can certainly fill up the graveyard quickly, and Founding the Third Path seems to work with all of that. So you're starting to see this spell slinging blue deck come together, that when it has a bunch of spells in the graveyard gets to make plays at cheaper rates like this. So I'm excited to try it out. I really want to see how Talarian Terror works out. Cut Down. 1 black, instant, destroy target creature with total power and toughness 5 or less. This card is sweet. Rafine, take Rafine down for 2 mana because you have to pay that ward price. Related searches. Creatures that can be cut down. Isn't this... I've never done this. Let me see this. Creatures that can be cut down. I mean, in all of Magic's history, 8,012 cards? Does anybody know the advanced Scryfall code for standard? I'm not going to figure it out right now, but let's just say you can hit a lot of things with this card, and I do expect it to be not just a staple, but omnipresent for a while in the format. I think almost every black deck is going to run 3 to 4 of these, and it's good. It means that it's harder for the opponent to just run you over because you had the wrong removal that didn't hit correctly. It was so painful, you guys. It was so painful for the last few months when you have your what is it? It's a Voltage Surge, but you don't have an artifact, or you have Play with Fire, and your opponent played turn 1 Kumano faces Kakazan, turn 2 Bloodthirsty Adversary, and they've got a 2-mana 3/3, you know? Now, to be fair, Cutdown's gonna miss that too. So maybe I shouldn't get too excited, but I have a feeling that's going to hit most of what you're looking for no matter what. And you know what will hit that 2-mana 3/3? Lightning Strike, and we'll get to that card. Next up, we have the Knight of Dusk's Shadow. 1 black, uncommon 2/2. What would Dominaria be without some sweet Grizzly Bear Knights? Yeah, you know, 2-mana 2/2s with a whole bunch of abilities. This is a human knight with menace. Your opponents can't gain life. 1 in a black, +1/+1 until end of turn. The pump ability is okay, and it's nice to have attached there. The menace, of course, is perfectly fine for a cheap attacker. But opponents being unable to gain life, that is a very helpful ability, especially where life gain is kind of baked into so many things, like the Meat Hook Massacre, like the Wandering Emperor. And you might say, well, it's going to kill this stuff, and it does. Like, it kind of sucks that it kills the Knight of Dusk's Shadow with a Meat Hook Massacre, and they still gain the life because it dies first and then it triggers. But your follow-up Knight maybe will keep them from gaining future life. Yeah, the more I say it, the more it's like, well, there's probably a million ways to kill this, and there's probably better 2-drops. But if the life gain decks ever do start to get too much support in the next 2 years, this card will have a reasonable home, and it'll be worth trying out. The next card is Pilfer. It's 1 in a black. It's a sorcery. I could make these bigger. I am sorry. I thought I had these larger. I've been looking at, what am I doing, right? But don't worry, better late than never. Professional YouTuber, I'm all over this stuff. Plus, I read you all those cards anyway. Pilfer, 1 in a black for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. Choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. Very straightforward. Thought Erasure was demure and had a whole bunch of extra stuff, but we don't have that now. Agonizing Remorse made you lose life. It exiled the card, but we don't have that now. But just straight up, non-land card. Doesn't have to be a creature, doesn't have to be an enchantment, doesn't have to be an instant or sorcery, just whatever you want, man. Just get in there and take that thing that's going to wreck you. The versatility alone, I think, makes the card playable. It will probably be played more than it should because people love this effect, but I have a feeling this is going to see a significant amount of play, and in some decks, it will be right. When you have your hard-to-answer permanent, like a Rafine, like a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, like a Kaito Shizuki, and its turn 3 is coming up, and you really just need it to resolve and stay on the battlefield for 2 turns, this is your 2-drop, taking your narrow answer that answers that card is very good. And then you just kind of try to run away with the game. So yeah, Pilfer, it's going to be played. It's going to be good. Sheldred's Restoration. 3 and a black with a kicker 2 and a white sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If the spell was kicked, you gain life equal to that card's mana value. Otherwise, you lose that much life. Exile this card. They decided that 4 mana to reanimate a thing was too good, and they've taken that away from us for a long time. You had to foretell it with like Return Upon the Tides, or you had to suck it up and pay 5 mana. Taking a mana off a card is super powerful, and even if you're reanimating something the size of a Toxrill, like 7 mana card, and you're losing 7 life to do it on turn 4, just that big play can take over a game if you're getting the right target. So I know this card will probably get played once we figure out what the best big monsters to reanimate in the format are. And then, later in the game, when you do have the mana, you can gain life instead of losing it. And that's a nice little addition. But honestly, if this kicker was not even here, I think this card would deserve a look and would possibly be very playable. So keep an eye on Sheldred's Restoration, and I can't wait to see what we bring back on turn 4 with it. Electrostatic Infantry. 1 in a red, Dwarf Wizard, uncommon. They're bringing the dwarves. You know, the tribe is getting a few more creatures all the time for your dwarf tribal nonsense. Anyway, this has trample, and it says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, put a +1/+1 counter on Electrostatic Infantry. These guys have given up on the equipment sub-theme. That stuff's lame. These dwarves are into spells. And a +1/+1 counter for every instant or sorcery you cast. It doesn't say triggers once a turn, does it? It doesn't go away on end step, does it? This little critter is just going to keep growing and growing. And you picture it in a shell with a bunch of cheap cantrips like Consider, cards that really benefit from playing a bunch of them, like the new Jin that looks like an Enigma Drake that has power equal to instants and sorceries in your graveyard. And you start to see, oh yeah, we can make some giant creatures by casting a bunch of spells. I think this card might see play. I'm really excited to see where it fits in, and the fact that it starts with trample means it's going to be a very dangerous threat. Fires of Victory. Sounds fun. 1 and a red, instant. It has kicker 2 and a blue. If this spell was kicked, you draw a card. Fires of Victory deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of cards in your hand. Obviously, there is a fail state for this card, where you do not have many cards in your hand, and it is very sad. But most games are decided in those early turns, not in those late turns. You have to survive long enough to do more meaningful things in the game as a control deck or mid-range deck before aggro completely beats you. So, when you have Fires of Victory, and you're casting it on turn 2, you're probably dealing 4 or 5 damage. And if you're a really good control mage who has lots of card draw in their deck and draws it and the shuffler doesn't get you, then later in the game you're still dealing a ton with this. The fact that it can also hit planeswalkers is a big deal because it's a useful card in the mid-range and control matchups. And the fact that it has kicker means you can cycle it later in the game when it would otherwise be dead, have very few to no targets. So this looks like a solid removal spell to me. Flunk wasn't a very good removal spell in black because you just didn't have a lot of control over the opponent's hand, or if you wanted to have control over their hand, you had to play a bunch of discard effects. It also had serious on the draw versus on the play issues, where Flunk was very, very bad on the play, which is where aggro decks really wanted their removal spell to break through. And it wasn't that great on the draw because the opponent could empty their hand a lot quicker. So I don't know. Flunk had all these issues. Fires of Victory kind of flips all of it, where on the draw this card is very, very good because it's your hand size that matters, and on the play it's probably serviceable. I'm sure you'll hit something with it on turn 2. So Fires of Victory, I think it's going to see plenty of play from the Izzet mages. Hammerhand. This is a red enchantment aura that enchants a creature, and when it enters the battlefield, target creature can't block this turn. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. If you've never played with or seen Hammerhand before, it is a reprint, but it's the first time to Magic Arena, and it doesn't look like much. Another one of those silly little red auras. But it's a lot better than it looks, especially if you can get a really low curve red deck going. The +1/+1 in haste going on a larger body means the opponent's probably taking a large hit out of nowhere, a sizable one, and the target creature can't block this turn means that whatever they had put on the battlefield to try to stabilize isn't going to work out for them. There's no limitation on that thing that can't block, so even the largest creature suddenly finds itself unable to stop all those little creatures getting through. It used to be that we would solve this problem when the opponent played their stabilizing creature with an Act of Treason type effect. Gain control and haste until end of turn. That was how we finish it. But Hammerhand is a cheaper way to do it that still gets everything through, and it might see play. It was actually a very played card in a mono red deck from back in the day that was very good at what it did. So look out for Hammerhand. Lightning Strike. We talked about it in previous video, but it might be one of the most important printings in the set. It's, of course, 1 in a red, 3 damage to any target. It is a reprint. It has been on Arena before. Check your collection before crafting it, unless you're pogged for the new artwork. Yeah, since this card has been spoiled, the amount of cards that have come across this particular set, the amount of cards I've looked at in the spoiler season that died a Lightning Strike, it's a lot. And I still love the idea of being able to flip day to night for werewolves or brutal Cathar by holding up Lightning Strike and then using it on the right thing. So this might be one of the best cards you can craft from the set, and it's going to end a lot of games. It's been a while since we just took 3 to face at instant speed, and yeah, you're going to remember very quickly, I think, when the ladder opens with the Dominaria cards, because Lightning Strike is going to be taking you out. Phoenix Chick. We talked about this on the show before too. This is an uncommon 1 red 1/1 flying haste that can't block. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may pay red. If you do, return it from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking with a +1/+1 counter on it. The more I've thought about the card, the more I continue to like it. There are plenty of cards that just want you to have a creature, any creature, for them to add some kind of benefit. Think about like Kumano faces Kakazan. You just want to play this on turn 2 with a little +1/+1 counter. They just really need you to have something. But there are a lot of cards that also try to work towards like states where you're attacking with multiple creatures. Think of the new Squee, the Mountain King, escaping from the graveyard, creating 1/1 every time it attacks. I still think that Phoenix Chick coming back is going to be kind of a big end game, almost a win more, whereas the opponent finally got to a position where they're attacking with 3 or more creatures. They're probably going to win in that spot, but a little bit of extra damage from a creature like this can put you over the top. The opportunity cost is super low, and it's probably going to get him for 3 or 4 damage if you just play it on turn 1, because he'll just be out there pecking away. Foriferous Vine Wall is 1 and a green 0/2 common plant wall. It's a defender, and when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 of your library. You may reveal a land from among them. Put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. I think this is a sneaky good little utility card, and when you're trying to get your mana together for 3, 4, and 5 color decks, it's kind of what you want. There's also plenty of things that want you to have a creature for various benefits, whether it's blinking that creature, returning it from graveyard to battlefield, putting +1/+1 counters on it, or sacrificing it to a make disappear. There's plenty of times where you just want a body, and this little 0/2, it can count, it can serve, and it will dig you for that land. It's a throwback to cards like Satyr Wayfinder and Gatecreeper Vine that I've missed. I feel like those cards were a cool part of Standard. I liked it when they were playable, and they haven't been playable since Eldraine because the format was so fast and so pushed that if you spent 2 mana, it better be to stop your opponent from winning the game or creating a landslide that would win the game. Maybe Standard's in a good enough place where a card like this can be useful again. I certainly want to try it with Make Disappear, if nothing else. Hell, just having an 0/2 for my Wandering Emperor to enter the battlefield, it -2s, it exiles the opponent's creature, right? Then you untap. How many times have you untapped and hit that +1 on your Wandering Emperor with no targets? Feels bad. Just having a little 0/2 to throw that +1/+1 counter on, and then have it chump block for your Wandering Emperor, or try to hold things off for your Wandering Emperor, sounds great to me. So whether it's control, mid-range, I'm gonna be trying out the Vine Wall. I hope that this card is good in Standard. Lanoir Stalker is 1 green for a common 1/1 elf warrior. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, this gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Any creature, it can be a token, it can be a different color, it doesn't matter. This critter is gonna get that bonus. And I think that in green, this card will be attacking for a lot of damage very early on, as green is, of course, a color that loves to flood the board, and elves as a type loves to flood the board. So I think that this is going to be a very important part of not just the Standard elf deck, but will probably get tested in older elf decks, as it puts a ton of damage on the opponent quickly, which isn't something that elves typically do. Typically, elves play a whole bunch of elves, generate a ton of mana, and then use some kind of amplifiers or lords to make their cards hit harder. This starts a proper elvish beatdown from turn 1, and it could really change the way that tribe plays out in the older formats. This is a really important one. Tune in, guys. Tailswipe. It looked like mono green as an aggressive archetype was dead. This card, it lost Blizzard Brawl, and this card might have saved it. So 1 green for an instant uncommon, choose a creature you control and target creature you don't control. If you cast this spell during your main phase, the creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. then those creatures fight each other. So the versatility is amazing. It's amazing. Like, you can hold it up and wait for your opponent to take action and then in response start a fight. That's pretty cool, especially if you're talking about the green versus green mirror. Thank you, matchmaker. Then, on the other hand, if you play it during your main phase, which early in the game people will probably be tapping out, developing their board, the +1/+1 bonus is huge. It hits the opponent extra hard. It's not indestructible, which was something awesome about Blizzard Brawl, and probably made Blizzard Brawl just too good, to be honest. But it is enough that it will probably make your creature fight over whatever your opponent played the turn before, and it's, I think, a solid enough fight spell, a good enough removal spell that mono green is still an option. If this hadn't been printed, they could print whatever green creatures they want, and I would have probably said I'm never playing mono green because they have 0 on the removal. The Avamaya Iconoclast is one I reviewed before. It's 1 in a green. It's a 3/2. The kicker is red. It has trample, and when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, +1/+1 and haste until end of turn. I was off this because I realized the +1/+1 was until end of turn, and I'm still off it for the most part. But the Elf tribe has received a lot of help in the last couple of printings. Like, we now have an Elf Lord, which makes the idea of having a 3/2 getting a little buff a lot more palatable. So this card starts to look a lot better to me as the Elf tribe starts to look better. Next is Baird, the Argivian Recruiter, and this is a red and a white for a 2/2 legendary human soldier at uncommon. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power greater than its base power, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. I think this card might be sneaky good and might even find its way into the Boros Hasty modified deck, and probably not as a 4-of, but as like a 2-of, because there are so many cards that trigger it. Thundering Reju, of course, does the job, but just having a counter on a Hopeful Initiate or a counter on a creature from Kamano Faces Kakazan actually does the job. So, yeah, getting larger than your base power doesn't sound very difficult, does it? I also believe... I need, like, leave me comments, all you judges and wannabe judges and people who play judges on the internet, leave me comments. I believe with Adeline this just triggers every time, right? Because Adeline's base power is 0. So I think it just, anything, if you play an Adeline, you keep getting 1/1 soldiers from this, and that alone is kind of messed up and really good. If I'm wrong on that, I still don't think it breaks the card. I think that this card with Hopeful Initiate, this card with Thundering Reju, this card with Bloodthirsty Adversary, with Intrepid Adversary even, like, it might be one of the 2-drops that Boros was really looking for, because it will continue to create a pretty good board presence that will eventually just kind of swarm over the opponent. It also adds, like, there is a soldier buff that we talked about in the rare review, and this is one of the best, like, takes I see for making soldiers a thing. Elias Ilkor, Sadistic Pilgrim. Creepy. Reminded me of the villain from the recent Thor Love and Thunder movie. White and a black, 2/2, legendary creature, Phyrexian Core Cleric. Death Touch. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. All about the Whispering One. So everything about this card is kind of creepy and cool. For one thing, people love those abilities. They love to gain life. They love their life gain triggers. And guess what? That, oh god, what is the card's name? The one that everybody, the life gain card that gets +1/+1 counters, you're all yelling it. Hallowed Priest is stuck in my mind, but that's not the name of the new rare one. Anyway, that card is still around. I believe it came around in Crimson Vow, so you need some life gain things to play with it. So yeah, that's gonna drive people absolutely crazy, and people love that effect. Also, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life is a super powerful effect, as we've learned from the likes of Blood Artist, Meathook Massacre. So getting both of those tied into this card is really good. The Death Touch is interesting. Like, I feel like this card is such a threat that the opponent will probably block it all the time, but yeah, you can attack into it and you can hold it back to block with it. It's an interesting ability to staple onto this Sadistic Pilgrim that I'm not sure why necessarily it needed it, but of course every little keyword helps, and they put more keywords on everything to try to make them more playable. So this card is pretty obviously pushed. It is legendary, so if there are some sneaky ways to get around the legendary rule in this specific set, like this is one of the creatures that you're definitely going to want to cheat the legendary rule with. Like there is the I think it's the 4 mana and also black and white legend that when a legendary creature dies, it comes back as a zombie that ignores the legendary rule. So if you have that card and you play your second one of this, it dies, it triggers itself on both sides and then comes back as a non-legendary copy, and then the opponent's going to be super dead pretty soon. So looking forward to playing with this card. I think it's going to be a very... People are really going to try to make this work. You're going to see this up and down the ladder, but especially like I figure this is going to be one of those cards that's super gold popular, if that makes sense. You guys know what I'm saying. Queen Elena of Ruadak. Anyway, white, green, Queen of Flowers for sure. Green, white for an elf noble, star. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. Let's go! If one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a 1/1 white soldier creature token are created instead. Is she like in the lore, like getting it on with all the soldiers? Just popping out little soldier babies that aren't elves left and right. They aren't human either. They're just soldiers. We don't know what they are. What you doing there, Queen? Anyway, I think the card is a really cool payoff. Obviously, both elves and soldiers like this type of effect. I like that you get a little bit of payoff in that if you have a bunch of creatures, this card is ripped, and enabler, so you don't feel bad playing it on like turn 3, because then the future tokens you create make more tokens, which makes this bigger, which makes it attack for more. Another strategy like green-white tokens that we haven't seen in a while, that's probably going to be very popular and you're going to see around, so get used to this. It's another good enabling uncommon that I don't know if the archetype would be even exciting without a card like this to carry it. So just really cool to see all these uncommons, right, that are enabling archetypes. They're strong enough that they make people want to play decks that they really wanted to build and play anyway, but they didn't have the exciting card to lead it. So really cool to see so many of these commons and uncommons looking strong. Are there any that I missed? Are there any commons or uncommons that you think I should have been talking about in this video that are going to end up being super played? What is the divide by 0 of this set that I completely ignored that then I'm just going to end up playing in every single deck? What did I miss? Anyway, thank you again for checking out these card review videos. I really enjoy making them at a time where I feel like I've played all the standard I can play, and it helps keep me excited and hopefully get people hyped for the next set. If you're watching, if you stayed till the end, you're probably getting hyped right now. Are you hyped? So, a few announcements for those of you super cool people who stay to the end, and a little bit of plug. One, please remember to go check out the playmats, see if they're still available. If they are, they usually don't last long, so look to lanterngames.com, Covert Go Blue. If you search for that in Google, it will probably come right up, the official Covert Go Blue playmat. And then the next thing is NordVPN, who sponsored this video. I really appreciate it if you guys would check it out. Click the link in the description. It, of course, takes time, money, organization, and effort to get these ads together, and we try to make them entertaining for you, my editor and I, and even the advertisers with their help. We really try to make the ads more entertaining than the typical shill. So if you appreciate that and you enjoy them, then please click the link in the description and at least check it out. Decide if it's right for you. And then finally, big announcement here at the end, just hidden at the back of this video because it's only for the coolest of you guys, you who stayed till the end. Dominaria United, early access, stream. It's access to the set 2 days early. We get to play with all the new cards on a sponsored account, hashtag ad, hashtag wizard sponsored, yada yada, you know what I mean. Anyway, we get to play with Dominaria United 2 days early. We get to try our decks against a number of other content creators. And I will be doing that stream live on YouTube. I know what you thought I was going to say there because I've said it for 3 long years every time there's an early access. Guys, please come to Twitch. Please come over to Twitch. Come check me out on Twitch. Come experience Twitch. Not this time. This time we do it where if Dominaria is taking us home, we're going home as well. My home, right here on YouTube. I will be streaming the Dominaria Early Access event, probably starting around 2 p.m. Eastern Time on August the 30th. Looking forward to seeing you there. It's the first time I've done one of these streams on YouTube. I hope you guys will come out and enjoy it. Let's blow the roof off of the MTG live streaming kind of environment, culture, atmosphere on YouTube completely. Let's blow away every other stream they've done on this platform, YouTube Gaming, for Magic the Gathering Early Access. Let's make it big. Thank you very much for staying to the end. Thank you for watching this video. And as always, I will see you in the next video. You're cool.